All right, we're back. It is COMP123, Summer 2016, a Centennial for Programming 2. We are week 13, part 2 of our broadcast. And did you guys figure it out? This is how we did it. Last time we were going to talk about swapping two abilities. How do we do that? Well, remember what I want to do is first thing of all, get the index, the selected index of each of these objects. Let me double click both these objects. So double click. So here's my first ability combo box, and then second one. Here's my second ability combo box. They're going to both do the same things, so we're going to probably need some other method they're going to refer to. But for the first thing, what I really do need is the selected index that I got, right? So whatever the selected index is of the event object, I want to know which one that is, or the selected index of my combo box. Let's try and do that. So if I go like debug dot right line. And I want to get the first ability combo box got selected index. We kind of did the selected index with lists, right? I want to kind of pump this out. And I want to do the same thing, see what it looks like with our, just to give it an intermediate value to understand what this is. So this is our second ability combo box, right? Got selected index. Selected index, right? Okay. So I want to swap, I want to kind of look and see, do I get those values? So if I press 0 or whatever, the other thing I talked about was, what about if there's nothing selected, right? So I want to choose an index to select on load. We talked about this last time. So my form loads, and I kind of initialize my random number. So this is what this does, initialize random number object, right? Now I want to select each of these boxes. So I'm going to say something like my selected box, my first ability combo box dot, and I want to kind of make my selected index, right? My selected index is 0, right? Can I do that? The same thing goes with my second ability combo box. My selected index should be 0. So I kind of say that my first item should be strength and strength. Let's see if that works. Oh, if it gives us an error. So run. Yeah, see, strength and strength. Okay, one thing to note is this. See how it says 0, 0? If I choose some output, if I go dexterity, that's 1. And if I go charisma, that'll be 6, right? Or 5, 0, 1, 2, 5. You know, 1, 2, 3, or 5. So 5 is charisma. That's my selected index. Okay. So I want to pass this number into, right, into the a method somehow that I'm going to reuse for both boxes, right, depending on what my selected index is. And that way it can decide which one's which. Okay. So I want to pass this into something else. So this is good. I'll leave that like that. So when it loads up, I'll get something. And you know what? I may as well not just do this, but also call my, that's why I did this, call my generate abilities method right when the form loads. So when a form loads, like I talked about, let's call my generate abilities method, right? So let's see if that works out. So let's see, first of all, let's see if that works. If I do it, there it is. So I get abilities right away, right? As opposed to no abilities. I get abilities right away. And if I keep clicking generate, it'll generate them more. And if I swap one or whatever, and I click the swap button, that's going to do something, right? All right, functionality. Okay, so I know that I can use my selected index, and I want to pass my selected index into a method, right? So what will the method do? The method is going to basically say, when I click on my selected index, it's going to assign a value to my text or the text box. I'm going to have two text box objects. Let me make them up here. Watch carefully. I'll make two text box objects, but I'm not going to instantiate them. All right, let's take a look. So I'm going to say like this. I'm going to say text box, or two text box. So text box is, we'll say the first ability, right? And we'll say text box. This is at the class level, right? Second ability. By the way, these are going to be private, so I might as well make them proper. Right? Same thing with our private random, right? I'm going to talk about this later on, but this doesn't have to be something we swap or share with anybody else. And I might as well rename this thing a little bit. So we'll rename this thing so that it's done properly with our standards, right? As well just do it by hand. There we go. First ability, second ability. So they're just text box objects, but I haven't instantiated them yet. Why? I'm going to make them I'm going to reference them with the other ones, right? Because they already exist. The other abilities, I already have a bunch of text boxes on my form. There's 6 of them. And all I'm going to do is point my first text box, my first ability to my text box, and so on. So how do I do that? Well, I want to say something like this. I want to, kind of choose ability. That's what I want to do here. Choose the ability to swap, right? So choose the ability to swap. So that's all I'm doing really with these 2 things. Choose the ability to swap. So I'm going to have a new method, right? So I'll say private void, call this choose ability, right? We're going to pass in a selected index, our selected index, and it's going to be a number, right? So selected ability, whatever that is, which is going to be an integer, right? We're just going to call it selected ability. So it's going to be an int object. I'm passing in an integer because this is going to be the index of the object. Okay, so now I'm going to do a switch. Here's my switch, right? And I'm going to switch. The switch statement is going to be based on my selected ability, whatever my number I'm given from the parameter, and it's going to say case 0, right? If it's the 0th ability, right? By the way, putting it out there for you guys, is this a great place to use? Just saying, right? Is this a great place to use for an enum? Wouldn't you say it's a good place to use an enum? Because when you look at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you will not understand later on when you look back at this code what the hell you're doing, right? So before we go into the case statements, I'm just going to put this out for a second, right? I'm going to use, if you guys forgot how to do an enum, right? I want to add an enum, but I want to use the class diagram to help us out, right? If you forgot. So I'm going to go right-click. I'm going to add a new class diagram, a new item, and we're going to say class diagram. So I'm going to say diagram, right? There we go. Here's our class diagram. We're just going to call this class diagram. And this class diagram is something that I can drag and drop my classes, like, for example, my generator form if I want. But let's not do that. Let's just make a new class. So I'm going to right-click and add a new enum, right? There's another way to add classes, remember? If you forgot how to do this. And we're going to call this ability enum, right? That's what it's going to be called, ability. We're going to call this ability. There it is. So ability.cs, press OK. Now you see that there's an ability enum in our class diagram, right? Now we're going to add some members. And they're going to be in the order that we want, right? Which is really important. So we're going to say add member strength. Add member, right? Dexterity. Add member constitution. Make sure you spell them properly. Constitution is a hard word to spell if you haven't spelled it for a while. All right, add member intelligence. Add member wisdom. And then add member charisma. There we go. So we got our little enum here, right? That's what this is. Remember that each of these values, right, they start off at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we don't care what they are. All we care is that the values that we have in our enum are human readable. So when we do our case statement, we're going to say that the value, we want to get the value for those enums, right? Okay, so now we'll save that, go back, and we can see that if I go back, I have my enumeration, right? It's called ability right here. Let's take a look. This is my enum. And if I hover over it, you're going to see that the value is 0. So I want to get the value of my enumeration. Okay? So I want to do something like ability.strength, ability.wisdom, right? So that's how I want to do this thing, but I can't quite do that. What's the way to do it? Remember, do you guys remember how to do that? So if I go case, right, and if I go ability dot strength, right, then break, do something there. And look, I'm getting an error, but this is what I want to kind of do. Come on, how do I fix this so I get the actual value of my ability dot strength? No, it's an enum, right? So it looks, you have to use the enum class, right? Enum dot, sorry, capital E, enum dot. Then if I get the get names, but I want to get values, right? Get values of my ability dot strength, right? So I want to get, but the problem is it says my get values says two things. Type of enum, right, is where I'm getting the values from. So type is the enum type. Well, that's not what I want. I don't want values. So I'm getting closer though. That's the kind of stuff that I want, but it's not what I'm looking for. Let's try this out. Enum dot, what else? What else can I do with enums? Because I want to kind of get the value of the enum. Not names, right? Not underline type. How do I do it? Well, I could cast it, right? I could say something like, well, whatever this value is, maybe I can cast this thing as an integer. Is that possible? I could do that. That's kind of weird casting syntax, but I could do convert to int32, right? So I could convert that to int32, right? And then now I'm going to get an error, right? Convert to int32. Right? I want to be able to take the value and convert it to an integer. So how do I do that? So let's go back. So if you guys forgot how to do it, I want to say get value from enum C#. We did this before, right? Here's the get values method, right? And then we can sit there and go do something like this, right? So for example, negative is -1, 0 is 0, and positive is 1. Those are the words, right? And what we want to do is we want to get the get values, enum.getValues type of sign magnitude for each value in values. Yeah. So each of the values, right? But I don't want that. I want it for specific enum, enumeration, right? So that's one way of doing it, right? So get name, enum parse. Enum parse. Let's see what enum parse does for us, right? So, okay, enum parse type of colors, right? Type of colors, because colors is the enum type. And then whatever the color string is, right? Here's our color string, 0, 1, 2, whatever. And we're going to get the color value, which is of type colors, right? So enum parse type of colors, color string. Right, which is going to, when we're also we're also converting it back to colors, right? Which we don't want. We want the integer to convert it to integer, right? Let's see if we can do that. So enum parse. One day when this thing comes back alive. Oh yeah, that'll take a while. I see you guys are really excited about this stuff, but you know, part of it, right? So ability, then type of ability strength, right? It says argument 2 cannot convert from ability to string, right? Let's see that conversion again, right? So type of colors to color string, and we're gonna parse that way, enum parse. But really, what I want is something like this, where just kind of you can convert, convert this to an integer. And let's see what I get if I do that. If I say if case is ability strength, then console log, or sorry, debug.log, wait line maybe. How about that, Tom? I'm not doing Unity. I'm doing this stuff, which is the int. Let's see what here. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll just say, just to do a test before I do this piece, right? I'm just going to comment this out for now because I want to show you how I do the test. So down in here, I can do something like when I pick one, then do it a debug. I know what these are now, and my selected index is what I get from these, right? So let's say for the first text box, when I click on that, I want to get it just to test it out. Debug.writeLine, and then enum. So I want to get an int. I want to cast my enum, which is ability.strength, to an int, and output that and see what I get. Does it work? Is what I'm saying, right? So I run it, and I should get a 0, but I get nothing. Oh, there it is. That's good. So it works, actually. So if I change this to dexterity, right, show you how this works, there should be a 1. So let's run it. I should see a 1 in the result over here, right? This is good. So that's all I need to do. Just do a casting like this syntax of the enum. So then up here, I know that this is going to work. For those people who forgot. So now that I know it's this, right? Ability strength, I can also do the same things for the other ones. So I can do case breaks for each of the other ones. And then it's more friendly, right? It's much more friendly than I got when I just kind of add in some random values, right? So this is the same case right now, but we're going to do it 6 times, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And instead of strength, we're going to just swap what these things are to dexterity, and then constitution, which helps us spell things properly, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. There we go. So now, depending on what it is, we know what they are, right? We're going to say the selected ability, whatever it is the index. If I get a 0, ability strength is the selected ability, and I'm going to return. I'm going to say that my I'm going to return back. So this is going to have a return, right? Sorry, it's going to return the text box, right? So I'm going to return back in here which text box is going to be the value. So I'm going to return back which one of these text boxes are one, and I have to have one of these returns for every one of them, right? So I could have a temporary text box that I put in here. So I say something like text box, then I'll call this text box, right? And that's what I want to return. I want to return the text box, whatever the text box is that I'm coming out with, right? Okay. Now it's giving me an error because it's unassigned, but this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say text box is equal to, right? If it's a strength text box, strength text box. Right? And then text box is equal to, we'll just call this dexterity text box. I'm making references to which one it is. You'll see what I'm doing in a second. And then text box is equal to constitution text box. We're going to keep doing this over and over again until we get all of them. Text box is equal to intelligence text box. And then text box is equal to wisdom text box. And text box is equal to charisma text box. Okay, so I got 1 for all of them, but I'm still getting an error down here because this is at the beginning. If I switch and I don't get anything from here, right, by chance, somehow, then this is going to come out with the null, right, which I can't have. So what I could do is instantiate just a different text box, like is equal to a new text box object that's empty. That'll solve the problem. Okay, so what am I doing here? I'm creating a text box placeholder object. That's what I'm doing. And then I'm making a reference between the actual text box and this one. But that's text box. I don't understand. But remember, what I have up here, right, is I have these 2 text boxes, first ability text box and second ability text box, right? These 2 ones that I've kind of have in our form, right? So what I want to say is something like this now. For my first ability combo box, when it's selected, I want to use the index to pass it in to my ability to this new thing, which is choose ability, right? So this is how it's going to be. It's going to say first, so this dot underscore first ability, right, is equal to the result of choose ability, and to pass in the first ability combo box dot selected index. That's it. So all I'm doing is I'm selecting, I'm making a reference, to the first ability selected. That's what I'm doing, right? And I'm going to do the same thing with the other one, except that this will be second ability, right? And instead of first ability text box, it'll be second ability selected, second ability text combo box selected. Whatever the selected index is that I choose, right? It's going to equal the second ability. Now that I have those, right, that happens behind the scenes. And when I click my button, my swap button, right, it's going to swap the abilities. And so I need a temporary value to swap. So I'm going to call this int temporary ability, right? And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, so I want to say temporary ability is equal to this dot underscore first ability dot text, right? We're going to talk about this in a second. And then temporary ability, or sorry, first ability dot text, first ability this dot underscore first ability dot text is equal to just a moment. Shouldn't be an int, it should be a string. There we go. And then first ability dot text is equal to this dot underscore second ability dot text, right? And then this is the swap, right? And then this dot underscore second ability dot text is equal to temporary ability. That does the swapping. Okay, so question: how does it know what first ability is and second ability is? Well, it gets that from choosability. And choosability, this method, is going to be called automatically when the form loads, because it's going to be triggered. It's going to trigger both these selected index changes, right, automatically, because when I load the form, it selects the index. So it triggers these 2 events automatically at the same time, right? And it's going to take the index that I've chosen and send it to choosability. And depending on which one it is, it's going to select the right text box, and going to assign it to the text box that I need. For example, first ability combo box is going to assign to the first ability text box, the temporary one, and the second ability text box here. And then when that's done, it's going to swap them out. Whew. Let's see if it works. First of all, this insanity, right? I feel like a mad scientist whenever I don't test stuff out. I think about the way of doing stuff, and then if I don't test it, it may not work. Right? Let's see what happens. Then comes debugging. All right, cool. So strength and strength, that can't change because it's the same. But let's say I go strength and, you know what, I want charisma. So strength and charisma, I want those two things to change. So that's my swap, and I click swap, and I should see 15 and 12 swap around. And if I do it again, if I go, you know what, so I got my 15, 14, 16, that's pretty good. I want to put my 9 on my charisma. I want to make my character a little uglier, right? So I want to put my 12 on my intelligence, my 11 on my wisdom, and my 9 on my charisma. So I probably do like the 9 on the charisma first, right? Or if I want to do the least amount of swaps, right? I don't know, I can do it the other way. So I say, I want to choose wisdom and charisma. I like that too, and swap. So I can do that. And then I want to do intelligence and wisdom. So I'll choose intelligence here, and swap. And now I've got my character the way I want, and I can click the next button and pass my character on. So swap abilities is working now. And this is my second feature that I have for my character sheet, right? Swap abilities. And that allows me to do things like customize my character abilities the way I want them. Here's the two features that I've added. I can generate abilities, but I can also use 4D6, that methodology, to make my character a little bit meatier, a little bit more heroic, right? And that's what I'm doing here, right? All right, let's do a couple things here. One thing is I haven't created a GitHub solution for you guys to look at this later on. Let's kind of put this together. So I'll say changes. These are all the things I've changed. I'll say added in, added simple or created simple character ability generation with ability swap option. So commit staged, good. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna go to sync. I don't have a Git repository. I'm gonna click get started, and I'm gonna choose oh, it's taking sweet time. I'm gonna choose Centennial, and this isn't gonna be the right lesson. It's gonna be COMP123 summer 2016 lesson 13 is what I want, and click publish. Hopefully that'll publish the right one. It says, what? There's already a repository named COMP123 summer 2016 lesson 13. How's that possible? Right? Let's check. See what happened. Because I had the same problem last time. I don't know why I got this. But let's see. So I go GitHub. You can always kill that and go again. And I'll go to Centennial. And COMP123. Well, how come it made COMP123? Is it JavaScript? Maybe it is. That's bad, right? Hey, here's something. Can I rename a repo? Right? I can. I can just go on and do one of these, right? COMP125, right? And then rename. Right. It's going to screw up my other repo, but that's okay, right? It's no problem. All right, cool. So now that I've got that renamed as COMP125, I should be able to go do this. Right, and click publish now. Good. And there we go. All right. So that's our. So if you want to follow along, or if you missed some of that stuff, it's right here up on GitHub for your viewing pleasure, right? I know some of you are like, okay, I don't know what you did, right? Let's go over what I did before one more time, because it's important for you guys to understand. So why choose ability? Why did I choose ability? Why did I do this thing? Because what my text box represents, what that text box is, this temporary enormous is a type text box. So whenever I create an object, remember, it's a reference type, not a value type. Every time I create an object from a class, it's not like an integer or a string or one of those kind of things. Actually, string is a bad example. Integer or double, right? Integers or doubles or those kind of simple types are value types. Objects are reference types, right? Objects have properties. Here, I'm creating a new object of type text box, but it's not physically represented on our form. It's just an object that I'm creating temporarily, right? And this text box object, I'm going to assign the actual text box that's on our form. For example, strength text box or dexterity text box or whatever it is that I'm choosing, right? So I'm getting that form and I'm assigning it as a reference. So now text box, it represents, it's the exact same, it's pointing to one of these things, charisma, text box, or wisdom. That's what I'm doing. And I'm returning that value. I'm returning it back out. And I'm doing this method so that way when I return it, I return a reference. That's what I'm returning. I'm returning the reference and I'm parking it inside of this first ability text box or second ability text box, which is another couple of text boxes that I've made to hold references to the text boxes. Now that I've got those, when I do the swap, right? When I do the swap, I use my swap button. All I'm saying is, hey, make a temporary string and take the string from the first ability text box and then add it in there and then swap out those two abilities. And I'm using, instead of using the actual text box names like strength text box or intelligence text box, I'm actually referencing their references. Whew, referencing the references. Okay, yes. Which one? This one? No, this thing here, right? Each case has its own. Take a look at the GitHub repo that I just posted. You'll see that there's slightly different than what you've done. This, I need to create this because an object that I'm going to replace because I'm returning something, and I can't return something that's empty. Potentially, if I somehow don't get anything in my case statement, then C# will complain that we're going to return something that's empty, right? Here, it's impossible. Even I'm going to return an empty text box. There's nothing in there. All the properties are null right now, right? Or they're default values. But then I'm going to assign something because one of these options is going to be true. Here's another good reason why I'm using enums. I'm using enums because, and by the way, this is cast syntax. This is old cast syntax. Back in the days of C and C++, we do it the exact same way. When I cast an object, I'm using ability.strength because, and ability.dexterity and so on, because it's more contextual, right? As opposed to using a number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That makes no sense to us. But when we look at this, we're like, okay, if it's ability strength, then my text box is a strength text box. And if it's an ability dexterity, then my text box is the dexterity text box. We understand these things a little bit more. When we come back next day, all right, just to go on to the next piece, because we're not quite done. What I want to do, and I'll just create this button right now. I want to create a button to go to the next form, right? Because I got my generate abilities, right? And when I'm done generating my abilities, right, I want to click on next, right? I want to click on next. I want to go to my next form, or just like it does this. This thing is a form that I'm following, right? So once I generate my abilities, so I click generate, I want to go to my next form. Now, again, you can think about organizing this in a slightly different way. But let us copy my generate button just from a style perspective, and I want to put it on the same line as this one and the same line as this for a second. I'm just going to resize the form in a second. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this the next button, like we've done before in the past. And we'll stop for the day. Again, we're not really doing anything new today, right? All we're doing is I'm showing you some more functionality based on the objects we have. One more thing that I like to do is I want to change the border style of my form so I can't resize it. I like that form border because what it does is it stops me from resizing my form. So I'm going to say fixed single, right? So I can't resize my form. So now I get a next box. One day when this thing comes up. Oh yeah, it's loving me. Here we are. Okay, we've got action. We got wow, man, that is pretty darn good, right? By the way, here's something that we could do, and I want to put it out to you too. What if I have my swap abilities. What about if I could add, I can increase one ability one time, right? How do I do that? So I can increase any one of my abilities one time. So once I choose that one time, once I've done it once, it becomes disabled, right?
Like base points.
Yeah, like I said, I want to go from a 14 to a 15, right? As an example, because I can't do it by hand, but I'm going to give the character the ability to kind of make it, some kind of, I can move one ability up once, right? So what I want to do for next day is I want to click on next. When I click next, it's going to take these abilities and pass them on to the sheet, the final sheet that I'm going to get, right? Or the next thing that I'm going to build in my character sheet, which is probably going to select things like class and race and those kind of things. We'll talk about that. By the way, hint, hint, I'm showing you all this stuff because on the exam, you're going to probably have to do something with random numbers. You're going to be probably having to do something to do with this stuff. I might even give you this as a template and then do something else with it on the output side, right? So just be aware that the stuff I'm doing right now, because we're leading up to the exam, is all the prep you're going to need, to build something on the final. All right? That's it for me today. See you next day. Remember that next day, coming up on Friday, we have a little quiz, right, based on all this web form stuff, right? Remember we did a lab last week. You're supposed to have done the lab. When's the lab due? Lab number 5 was due already, right?
Yeah, it was due last
Right.
Friday.
So you're gonna have a quiz that you're gonna write this Friday, based on stuff we did last week and the weeks before, just about web forms. Oh, sorry, Windows forms. Keep some web forms. Windows forms. And you'll be delighted to know that when you take the course next semester, which is COMP123, a lot of the stuff that we're doing here is very similar to the stuff we're going to do there, but on the web, at least for the first half.
Won't be able to if it's full.
Thanks, guys. See you next day.